I'm Corbett Wall with DVAuction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, November the 11th, Veterans Day. Thank a veteran somewhere today, guys. Brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is a bold, straight-shooting tulathromycin injection that does what it's supposed to do for you, for your cattle, and most importantly for your bottom line. For more information, go to macrocin.com. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards expecting 7,500 today. We think the market could be pretty good, and they pulled some cattle in. Of course, it was wet around there last week. Still wet around there, but they're able to get the cattle out now, and so they're getting a big run. Sale's going to start at 6 o'clock in the morning. Should be a good sale there. You can check it out at DVAuction.com. They'll have their way up sale on Wednesday, and then on Friday they're going to have a special Show Me Select Replacement Heifer Sale. That draws a lot of attention. That's a program through the Missouri Department of Agriculture and the University of Missouri. Those heifers are all screened. They've been pelvic measured. I mean, they've been checked out for just about everything. Basically kind of foolproof and meant for smaller producers for the most part. But check that sale out, all at Joplin Regional Stockyards there. More opposition to mandatory EID. So I was complaining last week there that we were not seeing some of our bigger associations come out against it, and then lo and behold, here it comes. Livestock Marketing Association, the LMA, which represents countless auction markets all over the country, they put out a press release on Friday, and they did not stutter. They put out a press release that said the EID enforcement, which started on Election Day, if you remember, November the 5th, must be suspended immediately. Now they put out this press release, and like I said, they were totally against the enforcement of this, and sometimes I get frustrated because I see trade associations and they don't do as quickly what I think they should do, because they are, and I have to remind myself that these trade associations, they basically just drive their policy. So, and they had policy against having mandatory EID on feeder cattle and calves, and so we hadn't got to that point yet, so it was hard for them to come out and say anything. We believe that they're going to try to do that down the road, but I think this may go a long way in trying to get a pushback on this, and Harriet Hageman's resolution to stop the enforcement of this may get a shot in the arm there. But also, they have policy against any of these tags costing the producer, and this is what got infringed within just a couple of days of the enforcement on November the 5th. I heard stories, and I'm not sure if any of these particular stories is what caused LMA to do it, but I did hear stories, especially up in the Dakotas, in that part of the country. They sell a lot of their young open cows now that lost a calf or something like that, and there's big demand for those. Well, if they go through the sale, and then of course they're going out of state somewhere, they all had to be tagged. Well, there was places that could not get tags, and I told you guys here a few weeks ago that we saw that there was going to be a budget shortfall, and they were not going to be paying for everything like they said they were going to. And that is what has got the LMA riled up, and they said, you know, that we're supposed to have been $15 million for this project. We found out that only $6 million was being spent on tags, and that, you know, that won't cover 8 million cattle, and we feel like there's going to be 11 million cattle that are going to fall under this. So you can't come in and enforce this if you haven't been prepared for it and you weren't set up for it. But they said in their press release that due to the current state of tag availability in various states, that they should stop or suspend immediately the enforcement of mandatory EID. They also stated their policy, which I just talked about a little bit, against any move to force mandatory EID of feeder cattle. So, like I said, we hadn't got to that point yet. Most of us feel like that's the next step, because APHIS's plan is to have those all cattle tagged from birth to slaughter. Well, they started out with dairy cattle, then they went to the breeding stock, and we assumed that they would be going to all classes. Well, LMA does have policy against that. And in the current mandate is not going to be fully funded by USDA, which that infringes on their policy too. So this is what caused them to put out the press release. So I give kudos to them. They do pull some serious weight in Washington D.C., and I hope that that they stop trying to enforce this, and I hope that this happening, and that they may suspend enforcement of it. Maybe that will keep them from trying to get it on all classes, which is going to cripple your auction markets and your small producers. So anyway, I was very impressed and excited to see that come across. I know a lot of other guys that I know, auction managers and owners, were also excited to see LMA come out with a strong statement like that. And I'll see some of those guys down this weekend at Santa Teresa, New Mexico, and I'll give them a attaboy there for that. But I was sure glad to see that. I will tell you that I'm back home now after the longest road trip ever. I think it's gone about 3 weeks. Back in the friendly confines here of my home office here in Canyon, Texas. So it's awful nice to be home. But I got to travel around a lot. I gave several speaking engagements all over. On Saturday, I was at the Kansas Cattlemen's Association, their convention there in Manhattan, Kansas, and they had another big crowd. Had a nice trade show there, a lot of booths there, a lot of people milling around, a lot of good producers, not any stuffed suits or anything like that. And I think that is a good organization. If you're looking for a home, they're a good one. And I enjoyed being with those guys there. We had kind of an informal presentation there, but I think everybody enjoyed it pretty well. I was able to drive back home kind of through the country, and man, what a beautiful sight to see, as all that country so wet. And I'm telling you right now, Southwest Kansas is beautiful. And I know what you guys are saying. I know of Southwest Kansas and it's a shithole. It's not a shithole. It appears that way sometimes, but Southwest Kansas was so beautiful. As I was driving through there on Sunday, I mean, that wheat that's up is so bright green it hurts your eyes to look at it, and just to see water standing out there in those wheat fields, I mean, it was a beautiful sight there. And then all your colors of fall really glaring. But I did see a few cattle already turned out on some wheat in Southwest Kansas there. But man, did we have some great moisture all over the country last week. And I'd mentioned that northeastern New Mexico and southeastern Colorado got quite a bit of snow, and that was true. I tell you what, I talked to some people around Clayton, and they had a nice snow there, but probably 6 inches or maybe a little more in spots. But gosh, you get over there north and west of there, like around Des Moines or Capulan. When I was a kid, we always turned cattle out between Clayton and Raton. Every summer we would turn cattle out, and I tell you what, the little shipped in heifers from the southeast would gain 300 pounds in the summer out there, especially around Capulan there, and that old volcano. There's a lot of lava rock around there, and you need rock to make that short grass powerful. and man, was it powerful. Good stuff there. And they had huge snows out there, like 3 to 4 feet of snow, and huge snow all the way down in around Las Vegas, New Mexico, all over that country there. And they can always use moisture around there, but man, they've really gotten it here in the last couple of months there. I mentioned what a big rain that they got here just a few weeks ago, but my gosh, it's just glad to see that happening. But let's talk about your board for last week. December live cattle futures. Last Monday started out down 85 cents. Then Tuesday was down 30. Wednesday up 62. Thursday up 42. Friday down hard, down $2.12 with your December contract on live cattle ending the week at 183.70, down for the week. February ended at 185.30. Feeder cattle for November, Monday was down 52, Tuesday was down 20, Wednesday up $1.55 with all that euphoria from the election results. Thursday was down a nickel, and Friday down $2.22 on feeder cattle. So November feeder cattle ended the week at $245.42. January ended at $241.42. I think these feeder cattle contracts they've got some room to get higher, because as much cheap feed as we have around, and now that we're going to have all this wheat grazing, these light calves, I expect this week these light calves to be sharply higher, and then that's just going to make everything else, what's going to pull everything else with it. And I think those are undervalued a little bit right now. But December corn ended the week at $4.31 a bushel. January beans ended the week at $10.30 1/4, and December hard red winter wheat ended the week at $5.64 1/4. In fat cattle trade up through Thursday of last week, Thursday afternoon at 2 o'clock when that report comes in, they had only sold 14,200 negotiated cash fed cattle in your 5-area feeding region. That's really light now. We didn't really find out what the market was until Friday. But up through Thursday, your few live sales, that was mostly in the northern plains, ranged from 185 to 189. That was $2 lower. Weighted average through Thursday on live steers was 187 1/4. That was over $2.50 lower than the previous week. Your dress trade ranged from 292 to 296, which was $4 lower. Weighted average on dress steers up through Thursday was 293.96, just over $3 lower. And you think, my gosh, the board wasn't down that much. No, it was your wholesale beef prices that pulled the cash fed cattle down so much. Your choice boxes especially were down hard late last week, and so anyway, that really affected your fat cattle trade. And you think, well, that's really their problem. The lower boxes is their problem. They need to hold that market up. They have something to say about that. Don't destroy our cash fed cattle market because you can't keep your wholesale beef market up. But that's what did it. That's all they were going to bid on cattle, and people went ahead and started taking it. But on Fridays, when we saw our market finally come together, for the most part, it was 2 to 4 lower in northern plains from 185 to 188, and 290 to 294 dressed. Southern plains was $3 lower at 187. Iowa sold 4,400 head. They'd sold 10,300 for the week. They about plucked Iowa clean the last 2 or 3 weeks. There's been huge movements in Iowa there. But 185 to 187 was your live price in Iowa on Friday. 290 to 298. Your dress market. Nebraska sold just over 10,000 on Friday alone. 17,800 for the week. There's going to be a few more because we'll get some late Friday sales here by the time we get everything wrapped up, which I'll give you on our next report. But live sales in Nebraska on Friday, 185 to 188. Dress sales 290 to 294. Kansas sold only 1,500. They had only sold 2,200 for the week, but they had just got the market established early Friday afternoon, so we didn't see a lot of that. One live price in Kansas, 187. Texas had sold 1,700 by 2 o'clock on Friday, and that was traded from 187 to 187.5. Box beef cutout values, which is what caused the lower cash fed market, they were a ton lower. Your weighted average on last week's box beef cutout values, the choice, your weighted average on all of last week's trade was 313.42. That was down 608 compared to the previous week's weighted average. And your late Friday sales were another $5.50 cheaper than your weighted average, just under 308. So I mean, they fell out of bed hard. Your weighted average on all your select sales last week, cutouts, was 282.90, down 547 compared to the previous week's weighted average. And the late Friday select sales were down another 370 from the weighted average at 279.19. Your choice select spread on your weighted average was just over $30.50, and all that information based on 706 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. But that choice cutout has dropped like $14.50 since it topped out on October the 22nd. Your slaughter for last week, pretty impressive actually, 619,000. Of course, you know, they need to meet. That was 4,000 bigger than the previous week and just 4,000 less than the same week a year ago. And that's about as close to the year ago slaughter as we've been for a long, long time. And of course, we know how much bigger those carcasses are. Talk about what else is going on. Sundgren Realty is having a big auction coming up here November the 22nd. It's going to be the Meyers Ranch auction. That's going to be happening on November 22nd, Friday. That's a Friday at 2 o'clock p.m. The auction is going to be held at El Dorado, Kansas Civic Center, and it is a one-of-a-kind deal and something that you don't see come up for sale very often. It's 540 acres. They're going to be selling it in 4 different tracts, but right there in the Flint Hills region, it's got Flint Hills pasture, it's got the livestock headquarters there, a hunting lodge, it's got tillable farmland on it, 2 different homes on it. I mean, a real deal, guys, and you don't see that land come up for sale very often there. But for more information on that, go to sundgren.com and look up that Meyers Ranch auction. Let's talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DVAuction ended the week at 249.59. That was down 57 cents for the week. Your latest CME cash feeder cattle index was sitting very close to that at 249.86. Your cash feeders in your sale barns last week, the trend on feeders was unevenly steady, which you can tell that by your index trend there. Unevenly steady. Calves were very uneven and didn't have a good test of calves really, and you think, gosh, in the middle of November not gonna have a good test. It was just so wet everywhere in the middle part of the country, and people were having trouble getting cattle in, and it was, you know, they just had mud and wetness to deal with and didn't have time or weren't able to get their calves in. So most sale barns that would be having 4,000 or 5,000 or 6,000 were only having 1,500 or 1,200 or something like that. And of course, with wet conditions there, you know, wherever those calves were going was going to be wet too. And it's tough to straighten out calves, especially unweaned calves that have been put together, and let alone just whenever you put them in a bunch of mud in a strange environment there. So it was very uneven, even though we had good demand for it. People weren't excited about giving big prices. Maybe they were for just a certain class and kind that they wanted, or a certain weight. So it just made your trends very uneven, wildly uneven on calves. But we still had some impressive markets, and especially late last week and over the weekend, because you know, the election had everybody on a high, and then all that moisture. And like I said earlier, I think these 4 and 5 weight calves and 3 weights too will be sharply higher this week, because I mean, there is a ton of wheat out there. I drove by, you know, just unbelievable wheat fields there in Kansas, and it's up better in Kansas than it is in Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle. But it looks pretty good out there, and there's going to be lots of wheat. But look at some of your big sales on Friday. Fort Pierre Livestock Auction had 5,700. Their markets were from steady to $8 higher, with your light 5-weight steer calves selling $10 to $12 higher. They had 849 head of light 5-weight steers. They averaged 525 pounds with a weighted average price on all of them of $339.76. Wow, I can see why they called them 10 to 12 bucks higher. The heavier 5-weights had 832 of them. They averaged 577. Weighted average price $320.74. Nothing to sneeze at there. They did sell in an individual quote on calves. 102 steer calves that weighed 529 that bring $349. Big price there. How about Santa Teresa Livestock Auction? Actually going to be going down to Santa Teresa this week. Going down on Thursday. They're having one of the LMA World Livestock Auctioneer Championship qualifying events right there at Santa Teresa Livestock Auction, right on the border. I'm excited to going down there. I'm going down there as a special guest of my good friend Tato Medina Wallace. And he's just one of the best guys that I know. And if you haven't met him or you're interested in buying some Mexican cattle, get a hold of him and visit with him. I guarantee you will like him, because you just can't not like him. Anyway, he's putting on a big event down there, and I'm excited to go down there and be there for it. But this past Friday, he sold 150 head of 399-pound good quality Mexican calves at $342 to come up this way, guys. Bluegrass Stockyards in Richmond, Kentucky sold 66 steers, weighed 827 at $253.90. Now at Campbellsville, Kentucky, the Bluegrass Stockyard location there had a Holstein special on Saturday. You don't see Holsteins all the time like you used to with all this beef on dairy and then these bigger dairies, but you get out in that part of the country, they've still got some. The Holstein special, they sold 90 head of Holstein steers, weighed 607 at $239.25. Thought that was awful good. How about Crawford Livestock Market in Crawford, Nebraska? They sell 66 steers, weighed 460, bring $355. But the most impressive quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend, and your Macrison No BS top quote for the day, come out of Fort Pierre Livestock Auction on Friday. It was 62 steers, weighed 799. It would be interesting to see what they would have brought if they'd have weighed 1 pound more on the average. But a load of them weighed 799, bring $269.50. And that's your feeder flash for Monday.